I'm Nettie, 68 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've lived with my son Michael and his wife Audrey. Last week at the company anniversary party, Audrey introduced me to the CEO as our Leech Maid while everyone watched. The pain of public humiliation cuts deep, especially when it comes from family. What Audrey never bothered to learn was that I'm actually the majority shareholder of the very company where she was trying to impress people. Let me know where you're watching from today and hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the people who think they know everything about you know the least of all. My late husband Harold and I shared 40 beautiful years together before cancer took him 5 years ago. We met in college. I was studying literature while he was pursuing finance with dreams of becoming an investment banker. Harold wasn't born into money. His father was a factory worker, his mother a seamstress. Every penny for his education came from scholarships and part-time jobs. When we married in 1978, we lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in Boston. Harold worked as a junior financial analyst at a small firm, putting in 70-hour weeks. I taught English at the local high school. We pinched pennies, clipped coupons, and dreamed of one day owning a modest home with a garden where I could plant tomatoes. In 1985, everything changed. Harold came home bursting with excitement about a small startup called Horizon Tech. They're developing computer components that will revolutionize the industry, he explained. Their founders are brilliant, but they need capital. Harold had been saving a small portion of each paycheck for investment opportunities. It wasn't much, just $12,000, but it represented years of careful saving. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, concerned about risking our hard-earned savings. "I've never been more certain of anything," he replied. "I've studied their business plan, their prototypes, their market potential. This company will change the world." Harold invested every penny of our savings into Horizon Tech. His colleagues thought he was crazy throwing money into an unproven startup when established companies offered safer returns. But Harold saw something others missed. The company struggled initially, nearly going bankrupt twice in the first 5 years. Harold never lost faith. He took a job at Horizon, accepting a lower salary, but negotiating for stock options instead. "One day these will be worth more than any salary," he assured me on the difficult days when we struggled to pay bills. He was right. Over the next 3 decades, Horizon Tech grew from a tiny startup with 12 employees to a global technology leader with offices in 16 countries. Harold rose through the ranks, eventually becoming chief investment officer. Rather than selling his shares for quick profits, he continually reinvested, slowly accumulating ownership. Few people realized just how significant Harold's stake in the company had become. He never flaunted his growing wealth or changing status. "Money talks loudest when it whispers," he often said. Even when his stock options made us millionaires many times over, we continued living modestly. Our home was comfortable but not ostentatious, a 4-bedroom colonial in a nice neighborhood. We drove reliable cars, but never luxury models. Our vacations were meaningful, but not extravagant. Harold would say, "Wealth isn't for showing off, it's for security and making a difference." Our son Michael grew up without realizing the extent of our financial situation. We wanted him to develop a strong work ethic and appreciation for value rather than price. He attended public schools, worked summer jobs, and earned his own spending money. When he expressed interest in business, Harold encouraged him, but insisted he find his own path. Michael graduated with a business degree and, to my surprise, applied for an entry-level position at Horizon Tech. "I want to earn my place," he told us when we offered to help. "No special treatment." Harold respected his decision. As Michael worked his way up to middle management, Harold made sure no one gave him preferential treatment because of their relationship. Few of Michael's colleagues even knew he was the CFO's son. When Harold was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, the prognosis was grim from the start. During his final months, he meticulously organized our financial affairs. "Nettie," he said one evening as we sat in the hospital garden, "I've structured everything to go to you. My Horizon shares our investments, everything." "Shouldn't some go directly to Michael?" I asked. Harold shook his head. "He's not ready for that responsibility. The wealth could change him, interrupt his journey. Let him continue earning his way. You'll know when the time is right to tell him." After Harold passed, I met with our family attorney, Thomas Sullivan. He explained that I now owned 51% of Horizon Tech, making me the majority shareholder. "Do you want to announce this to the board?" Thomas asked. I thought of Harold's philosophy about quiet wealth. No, I decided. Harold kept his position private for a reason. I'll continue as he did as a silent majority owner. Thomas helped arrange for my shares to be held through various trusts and investment vehicles, maintaining my privacy while protecting my interests. The board knew someone held controlling interest, but few knew it was me. After Harold's funeral, I moved to a modest 2-bedroom condo closer to downtown. Michael visited regularly, bringing groceries and checking on maintenance issues. We grew closer in our shared grief, often reminiscing about Harold over cups of tea. I continued living, simply honoring Harold's approach to wealth. My neighbors knew me only as a retired schoolteacher and widow. No one suspected that the unassuming woman in apartment 3B held the controlling interest in one of the city's largest employers. The wealth remained exactly as Harold intended, quiet, private, and waiting for the right moment to make its presence known. Michael met Audrey at a marketing conference 3 years after Harold passed. He was 36, she was 32. Audrey worked for a rival tech company as their marketing director, a position she'd achieved through relentless ambition and strategic networking. The first time Michael mentioned her, I heard the change in his voice. "Mom, I've met someone amazing," he told me over our weekly Sunday dinner. "She's brilliant, driven, beautiful, everything I've been looking for." Their relationship progressed with whirlwind speed. Within 3 months, Audrey had moved into Michael's downtown apartment. When he brought her to meet me, I saw what attracted him. She was undeniably gorgeous, with long auburn hair, striking green eyes, and a dazzling smile. She carried herself with exceptional confidence, commanding attention whenever she entered a room. "It's lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Harrington," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Michael talks about you constantly." Something in her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but I dismissed my concerns. Grief sometimes makes us overly cautious about new people in our loved ones' lives. During dinner, Audrey asked numerous questions about Michael's childhood, our family, and especially about Harold. Her interest seemed genuine until she began probing about finances. "Michael mentioned your husband was in finance," she said casually. "Did he leave you well taken care of?" "Harold was very responsible," I replied carefully. "I have everything I need." "That must be such a comfort," Audrey pressed. "So many widows struggle financially after losing their husbands. Did he have good life insurance investments?" Michael gently changed the subject, but I'd noticed the calculating look in Audrey's eyes. Over the following weeks, she continued finding ways to ask about Harold's estate and my living arrangements. 6 months after they began dating, my condo building experienced major water damage from a burst pipe upstairs. The repairs would take months, and the building management suggested residents find alternative housing. "Mom, you should move in with us," Michael offered immediately. "We have the spare bedroom." Audrey's smile tightened slightly. "Of course," she agreed, though our place is rather small for 3 adults. 2 weeks later, Michael announced they'd found a larger house to rent, a beautiful 4-bedroom in Newton with a generous yard. "It's perfect for all of us," he insisted. "Plenty of space." I later discovered Audrey had been wanting to move to this upscale neighborhood for months, and my housing crisis provided the perfect justification for the significant rent increase. The day I moved in, Audrey showed me to the smallest bedroom at the back of the house. "I hope this works for you," she said. "We need the second largest room for our home office, and the guest room needs to stay available for when my parents visit." The room barely fit my bed and a small dresser. Most of my belongings went into storage since there was no space in the house, despite its 4 bedrooms and finished basement. That first evening, as we sat down to dinner, Audrey outlined house rules with the precision of a military commander. "We all need to contribute to make this work," she explained. "Since Michael and I both work such long hours, we thought you could handle the cooking and cleaning. You're home all day anyway, and it would be your way of contributing since we're covering the rent." Michael looked uncomfortable, but remained silent. I noticed this new pattern, his reluctance to contradict Audrey, even when she said things that clearly made him uneasy. Within weeks, Audrey and Michael were engaged. The wedding planning consumed every conversation with Audrey, orchestrating an extravagant ceremony at Boston's most exclusive hotel. I wondered how they could afford such luxury on their salaries, but kept my concerns to myself. The wedding itself was a spectacle of excess. 6 bridesmaids in designer gowns, a 5-tier cake, rare orchids flown in from Thailand. Audrey's parents, I learned, were middle-class small business owners who couldn't contribute much financially. The burden fell entirely on Michael, who I later discovered had taken out a significant loan to fund Audrey's dream wedding. Throughout the celebration, I was seated at a back table with distant relatives, far from the main family table where Audrey's parents enjoyed pride of place. When I asked Michael about the seating arrangement, he apologetically explained that Audrey had handled all those details. As I watched them dance their first dance as husband and wife, I wondered what Harold would think of our son's new partner. He had always valued substance over style, generosity over acquisition, kindness over status. I silently promised Harold I would support Michael's choices while keeping a watchful eye on this new dynamic. Little did I know how challenging that promise would become in the months ahead. Life in Michael and Audrey's home quickly revealed the true nature of my position in their household. What had been presented as everyone contributing became a one-sided arrangement where I functioned as an unpaid housekeeper. 1 week after their honeymoon, Audrey presented me with a detailed schedule of household duties. Monday was for deep cleaning bathrooms and kitchen. Tuesday was laundry day, not just my own, but theirs as well. Wednesday involved grocery shopping and meal prep for the rest of the week. Thursday was for dusting and vacuuming the entire house. Friday included window cleaning and yard work. "We need everything to be just so," Audrey explained. "Michael's colleagues might drop by and appearances matter in his position." I initially complied, grateful for having a roof over my head while my condo underwent repairs. I told myself this arrangement was temporary, perhaps 3 months at most. But as weeks turned into months, and my condo management company went bankrupt, mid-repairs, leaving the building in legal limbo, my temporary situation began looking increasingly permanent. Michael's behavior changed subtly but significantly. The son who once called me daily now barely made eye contact at breakfast, rushing out the door with a travel mug of coffee and a quick "thanks, Mom" that felt more like dismissal than gratitude. Our Sunday afternoon talks, a tradition since Harold died, vanished from his schedule, replaced by golf games with Audrey's father and client dinners organized by his wife. When I mentioned missing our conversations, Michael looked genuinely surprised. "We talk every day, Mom," he said, gesturing around the kitchen where I prepared his meals. The painful truth dawned slowly. He no longer saw these interactions as meaningful. I had become part of the household machinery, like the refrigerator that provided cold drinks or the furnace that supplied heat. Audrey's complaints about me began as subtle comments made within my earshot to friends on the phone. "Yes, it's challenging having Michael's mother here all the time. No privacy. You know how older people are about television volume." These evolved into direct criticisms. My cooking was too traditional or too heavy. My cleaning wasn't up to her standards. Streaks on the mirrors, dust in forgotten corners. Even my presence in common areas seemed to irritate her. "Nettie, Michael and I need the living room tonight for a video call with clients. Would you mind staying in your room after dinner?" These requests became so frequent that I found myself confined to my bedroom most evenings, watching an old tablet Harold had given me rather than the living room television. The most painful incident involved Harold's photographs. I had brought several framed pictures, our wedding day family vacations, Harold's retirement party. Audrey initially allowed them in my bedroom, but objected when I placed a small photo of Harold on the living room bookshelf. "It doesn't match our aesthetic," she explained, removing it. The next day I discovered she'd taken all my photos from my room and packed them away in a storage box in the garage. "We needed to dust thoroughly," was her explanation. When I retrieved them, I found 2 frames cracked and one precious image of Harold holding newborn Michael water-damaged beyond repair. I endured these indignities, silently worried about creating conflict that might strain my relationship with Michael even further. The Boston housing market had become prohibitively expensive, and my teacher's pension, the only financial resource Michael believed I had, wouldn't cover decent accommodations. One evening, I overheard Audrey on the phone with her mother. "She's becoming such a burden," Audrey complained. "Michael won't discuss assisted living yet, but I'm working on him. She's perfectly healthy but takes up so much space. The leech has no idea how she impacts our lives." The word leech burned like acid. In that moment, I nearly broke my promise to Harold about keeping our financial situation private. How quickly Audrey's attitude would change if she knew whose money had actually purchased her designer wardrobe and funded the lifestyle she flaunted to friends. But Harold's wisdom held me back. "Money changes how people see you," he once cautioned. "Once they know, you'll never be sure if they value you or what you can give them." So I continued my role as the invisible housekeeper, watching as Michael climbed the corporate ladder at Horizon Tech, recently promoted to Director of Operations. Audrey had strategically quit her job after their marriage, citing the desire to support Michael's career, while actually spending her days at expensive lunches, spa appointments, and shopping excursions, all on my son's increasingly stretched salary. The tension culminated when I discovered Audrey had been opening mail addressed to me. A letter from Thomas Sullivan regarding one of my investment accounts lay open on the kitchen counter. "Why are you going through my personal mail?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Audrey didn't even feign embarrassment. "It looked important, and you're so forgetful lately. I was helping." "That's private correspondence from my attorney." "Attorney?" Her eyes narrowed with sudden interest. "What do you need an attorney for?" "That's my business, Audrey." "Everything in this house is our business," she snapped, dropping the pretense of concern. "We provide your roof, your food, your entire lifestyle. The least you could do is be transparent about your affairs." Michael walked in at the height of the argument. For once, he seemed disturbed by his wife's behavior. "Audrey Mom's mail is private." "Don't be naive, Michael. What if she's making financial decisions that could affect us? What if we end up responsible for debts she's incurring?" The absurdity of her concern almost made me laugh aloud. If only she knew that I could purchase their house car and everything in it with what I earned in monthly dividends from Horizon Tech alone. That night, lying awake in my small bedroom, I began to question Harold's wisdom about keeping our wealth secret. Had protecting Michael from the influence of money simply left him vulnerable to someone who wanted it even more? Horizon Tech's 30th anniversary celebration was scheduled at the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown. The event promised to be the social highlight of the corporate calendar, with the governor and mayor expected to attend alongside business leaders and technology innovators. I was surprised when Audrey suggested I join them for the gala. "Family appearances matter for executives," she explained to Michael within my hearing. "Having 3 generations shows stability and commitment to the company." Michael seemed pleased by the idea. "It would be nice to have you there, Mom. Dad helped build Horizon in the early days. It would be meaningful to have you represent him." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of genuine inclusion. Perhaps this could be a turning point in our strained relationship. I spent days preparing, carefully pressing my best navy dress and scheduling an appointment at the salon where I'd gone with Harold for special occasions. The evening of the gala, I emerged from my room feeling confident. The hairdresser had worked wonders with my silver hair, styling it in an elegant updo. I'd applied subtle makeup and wore the pearl necklace Harold had given me on our 30th anniversary. Audrey's eyes widened slightly when she saw me. "You look nice," she said, sounding surprised. "That necklace is quite pretty. Is it real?" "Harold gave it to me." I answered, simply not elaborating, that each pearl had been carefully selected and cost more than the designer dress she was wearing. Upon arriving at the hotel, I found myself genuinely excited. This was Harold's company, the business he helped build from 12 employees to thousands. Somewhere in this room would be people who remembered him, who had worked alongside the brilliant, kind man I'd loved for 40 years. Almost immediately, Audrey steered Michael toward a group of executives, leaving me standing alone near the entrance. "Mingle, Nettie?" she called over her shoulder. Enjoy the free food. Left to my own devices, I wandered through the ballroom, pausing to examine historical photos displayed on easels. A timeline of company milestones featured several images of Harold, younger, vibrant, standing alongside founders and early team members. I touched one photo, gently remembering the day it was taken. He'd been so excited about a breakthrough that he'd called me from the office, voice brimming with enthusiasm. Nettie Harrington. I turned to find William Patterson Horizon's current CEO approaching with a warm smile. I recognized him from company publications and news coverage, though we'd never formally met. Harold had mentored him decades ago. "Mr. Patterson," I acknowledged, surprised he knew who I was. "Please, it's Bill," he insisted, taking my hand in both of his. "Your husband was the finest man I ever worked with. Without Harold's guidance and vision, I wouldn't be standing here today, and neither would Horizon." Tears pricked my eyes at this unexpected acknowledgement. "That's very kind of you to say." "Not kind, truthful. Harold saw potential where others saw risk. His early investment and strategic direction built the foundation everything else stands on." He gestured around the opulent room. "He should be here to see what his vision created." We chatted comfortably about the early days with Bill, sharing anecdotes about Harold I'd never heard before. For the first time in years, I felt the warmth of being truly seen, not as an inconvenience or housekeeper, but as the partner of a man who had made a significant impact. Our conversation attracted attention from other executives who joined our circle. I noticed Michael watching from across the room, confusion evident on his face as he observed the CEO of Horizon Tech treating his burden of a mother like an honored guest. Audrey noticed too. Her expression shifted from surprise to alarm as she excused herself from her conversation and made a beeline toward us. She clearly couldn't understand why her housemaid mother-in-law was commanding the attention of the most powerful people in the room. "There you are," Audrey exclaimed too loudly, inserting herself between me and Bill. "I see you've met our CEO." "Indeed," Bill replied warmly. "Your mother-in-law and I were just discussing Harold's extraordinary contributions to Horizon." Audrey's smile tightened. "How wonderful! I hope she hasn't been boring you with old stories." "On the contrary," said another executive, "Mrs. Harrington's insights into the early days are fascinating." Audrey's eyes darted nervously between the executives. I could almost see the calculations behind her eyes. How to extract me without offending important people, how to reclaim control of the situation. "Well," she said with a forced laugh, "I should probably rescue you from our resident historian." Then came the moment that would change everything. Audrey placed a proprietary hand on my shoulder and addressed the gathered executives. "Gentlemen, I'm not sure if Bill explained who Nettie is. She's our Leech Maid, lives with us because she can't afford to support herself. Such a sweet burden, aren't you, Nettie? She cleans our house in exchange for room and board. We couldn't bear to see her in some dreadful state facility." The silence that followed was absolute. Bill's face froze in shock. The other executives looked at their shoes, uncomfortable witnesses to my public humiliation. The pain of her words hit me physically like a punch to the stomach. After 3 years of private indignities, this public shaming broke something fundamental inside me. "Excuse me," I whispered, turning away before they could see the tears forming. I moved quickly through the crowd toward the terrace doors, desperate for fresh air and privacy. Behind me, I heard Bill's confused voice. "Does she not know who—" before the closing door cut off his words. Outside in the hotel garden, I gripped the stone balustrade and took deep breaths of the cool evening air. Decades of maintaining Harold's philosophy of quiet wealth warred with the burning desire to reveal exactly who owned the company Audrey was so desperately trying to climb within. Michael found me there minutes later. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he began, his expression genuinely distressed. Audrey didn't mean it the way it sounded. How else could Leech Maid be meant, Michael? She was nervous trying to be funny. Her humor sometimes comes across wrong. "That wasn't humor," I said quietly. "That was how she truly sees me, and apparently how you see me too, since you've never corrected her behavior." "Mom, that's not fair. You know how much I appreciate everything you do for us." "Do I? You've watched your wife turn me into an unpaid servant. You've allowed her to belittle me daily. When did you become someone who would stand by while his mother is treated like this?" He had no answer, just mumbled another apology before suggesting we return inside where Audrey was worried about us. Looking at my son, Harold's son, I made a decision that would alter all our lives. I won't be going back inside, and I won't be returning to your home either. What, Mom? Where will you go? I straightened my shoulders, feeling Harold's presence beside me, guiding my next words. Somewhere I'm respected, I replied simply. It's time for some truths to come to light. I took a taxi directly from the hotel to my old condo building. Although still technically uninhabitable due to the ongoing legal battles over repairs, the security guard recognized me and let me in to use the building's business center. From there, I called Thomas Sullivan. Despite the late hour, Thomas answered immediately. Nettie, is everything all right? No, Thomas, it's not. I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to make some changes, significant ones. Thomas listened without interruption as I described the evening's events and the months of mistreatment leading up to them. When I finished, he sighed heavily. Harold worried something like this might happen eventually. He left instructions for me in case you ever decided to assume a more active role in your holdings. What sort of instructions? A comprehensive briefing package about Horizon's current operations leadership structure, voting procedures, everything you'd need to step into your role as majority shareholder. He called it Operation Glass Slipper. Despite everything, I laughed. That sounds like Harold, always with the fairy tale references. He knew someday the hidden queen might need to take her throne, Thomas said. The question is, are you ready for what that entails? Once you reveal your position, your life changes permanently. I thought about the small bedroom at Michael and Audrey's house, the scheduled chores, the opened mail, and finally, the public humiliation. I'm ready, Thomas. What's our first step? First, you need a proper place to stay tonight. Within an hour, Thomas had arranged a suite at the Four Seasons and dispatched his assistant to purchase essential items I would need until we could retrieve my belongings. By midnight, I was sitting in a luxurious hotel room with a view of the city lights, a stark contrast to the servants' quarters I'd inhabited for 3 years. The following morning, Thomas arrived with 2 associates and several document-filled portfolios. Let's start with your immediate needs, he said. I've located a suitable apartment in Beacon Hill. It's available immediately, fully furnished with appropriate security. We can have you moved in by tomorrow. Next came financial matters. Thomas showed me updated statements of my holdings, figures that made even me, who knew the general magnitude of our wealth, catch my breath. Harold's investments have performed exceptionally well, Thomas explained. Your Horizon Tech shares alone have quadrupled in value since his passing. We spent hours reviewing documents, preparing authorization letters, and discussing strategy for the upcoming board meeting scheduled in 3 days. The timing is actually perfect, Thomas noted. All senior leadership will be present for quarterly results. I've already confirmed with Patricia Morgan on the board. She's maintained your proxy all these years and is delighted you're finally stepping forward. Patricia had been Harold's closest ally on the board and one of the few people who knew the identity of Horizon's majority shareholder. Her late-night call reinforced my resolve. It's about time, Nettie, she said warmly. Harold always said you were the smartest person in any room. The board needs your perspective, especially with the expansion decisions coming up. The next day, I moved into my new apartment, a 3-bedroom penthouse with panoramic views of Boston Harbor. The contrast to my previous accommodations couldn't have been more dramatic. That evening, Michael called repeatedly. I answered on his 3rd attempt. Mom, where are you? He demanded, anxiety evident in his voice. I came home from work and all your things were gone. I told you I wouldn't be coming back. But where did you go? How will you manage your pension barely covers? I'm perfectly fine, Michael, I interrupted. Better than I've been in years, actually. Mom, please. Audrey feels terrible. She wants to apologize. I'm sure she does now that she's realized the consequences of her actions. What does that mean, Mom? Just tell me where you are. I'll come get you. I'm not a lost pet, Michael, I said firmly. I'm a grown woman who's made a decision. I'll contact you after the Horizon board meeting on Thursday. The board meeting? What are you talking about? You'll understand soon enough, I replied. Now I need to prepare. Good night, Michael. As I hung up, I felt a strange combination of sadness and liberation. The son I loved had stood by while I was demeaned and exploited. Yet still maternal love ran deep. The coming revelation would shock him, perhaps even hurt him temporarily, but I had to believe Harold was right about his fundamental character. Under Audrey's influence, he had lost his way. Perhaps this would help him find it again. I spent the next day with Thomas and Patricia, preparing for my official introduction to the board. We reviewed current projects, executive performance, and strategic initiatives. Harold had kept meticulous notes on company operations updated regularly until weeks before his death. Reading them felt like having him guide me one last time. That night, I stood before my bedroom mirror in the new apartment, barely recognizing the woman who looked back at me. Gone was the hunched posture and apologetic demeanor I'd adopted over years of trying to minimize my presence in Michael and Audrey's home. In its place stood a woman who carried herself with the quiet dignity Harold had always admired. Tomorrow, the world would meet the real Nettie Harrington, not the Leech Maid, but the woman who owned controlling interest in one of the country's most innovative technology companies. As I turned out the lights, I whispered to Harold's memory, "I think I'm finally ready for Operation Glass Slipper." The morning of the board meeting, I dressed with particular care in a tailored charcoal suit Thomas had arranged from a top Boston boutique. The outfit was elegant but understated, projecting authority without ostentation, exactly as Harold would have advised. My new driver, Samuel, transported me to Horizon headquarters in a discreet black sedan. The gleaming glass tower in Boston's Seaport District housed over 2,000 employees. Harold had helped design this building, insisting on sustainable features decades before they became fashionable. At the executive entrance, the security guard glanced at the visitor badge Thomas had arranged, then did a double take when he saw the name. "Harrington? Any relation to Harold Harrington, ma'am?" "His wife," I replied with a smile. "Mr. Harrington was a great man," he said, his face lighting up. "Started same year I did 30 years ago. Always remembered my name asked about my kids. Not many executives like that." This happened repeatedly as I made my way to the executive floor, longtime employees recognizing my last name and sharing brief stories about Harold's kindness, brilliance, or integrity. His legacy lived on in this building in ways Michael had never mentioned. Patricia Morgan met me outside the boardroom, embracing me warmly. At 72, she remained an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed. "You look ready for battle," she observed with approval. "Is that what this is? Change always feels like conflict to those who aren't expecting it," she replied. "The board has been notified that the majority shareholder will be attending today, but not your identity. Only Bill Patterson knows, and he's enjoying the suspense." Inside the boardroom, a magnificent oval table dominated the space. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Boston Harbor. Most of the seats were already filled with board members and senior executives reviewing materials for the meeting. Conversation stopped abruptly when I entered with Patricia. Bill Patterson rose immediately from his chair at the head of the table. "Mrs. Harrington, welcome," he said warmly, approaching to shake my hand. "Please take the seat beside mine." Whispers circulated the room as Patricia led me to a chair normally reserved for the most senior board members. I recognized several faces from company publications and news coverage, but most were strangers. All wore expressions of curiosity and confusion. One face I recognized instantly, Michael's. He sat halfway down the table among other division directors, staring at me with complete bewilderment. A text message alert flashed on his phone, undoubtedly from Audrey, asking why his housemaid mother was sitting at the head of the boardroom table. Bill called the meeting to order with a knowing smile. "Before we begin our regular agenda, I have a special announcement. For many years, the identity of our majority shareholder has been kept private at their request. Today, that shareholder has decided to take a more active role in company governance." He gestured toward me. "Most of you knew and respected Harold Harrington, whose financial acumen and strategic vision helped build Horizon from a struggling startup to the industry leader we are today. What few knew was that Harold structured his holdings to transfer to his wife upon his death. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce Nettie Harrington, owner of 51% of Horizon Tech shares and our controlling shareholder." The silence that followed was profound. Every eye in the room turned toward me, expressions ranging from shock to calculation to respect. Michael's face had gone completely white. Mrs. Harrington has graciously agreed to address the board. Bill continued nodding for me to speak. I rose slowly, feeling Harold's presence beside me as I faced the room. Thank you, Bill. For those who don't know me, I'm Nettie Harrington. My late husband Harold and I believed deeply in this company from its earliest days. Our first investment, $12,000 in 1985, represented everything we had at the time. I smiled at the memory. Harold often said that Horizon wasn't built on technology alone, but on people who believed in creating something meaningful. He structured his ownership to remain private because he valued substance over status. He never wanted decisions made to impress him rather than to benefit the company and its employees. Looking around the table, I continued. For 5 years, I've honored that approach, observing from a distance. Today, I'm breaking that silence because I believe Harold's vision needs renewed emphasis. While quarterly profits matter, we must never lose sight of innovation, integrity, and impact, the 3 pillars Harold saw as Horizon's true foundation. For 20 minutes, I outlined my vision for the company's future, drawing on Harold's notes and my own observations of industry trends. As I spoke, I watched expressions change from skepticism to interest to engagement. These people had respected Harold. They would listen to his wife. Throughout my presentation, Michael sat frozen, barely blinking. When I concluded, Bill opened the floor for questions, most focused on my plans for Horizon's charitable foundation and sustainability initiatives. As the discussion progressed, the boardroom doors opened unexpectedly. Audrey stood in the doorway, dressed impeccably in a designer suit, her expression a mixture of confusion and determination. "I apologize for interrupting," she said smoothly. "I received an urgent message from my husband." Every head turned toward Michael, who looked mortified. Clearly, he hadn't summoned her. Bill Patterson rose, his expression neutral but firm. "Ms. Wright Harrington, this is a closed board meeting. Unless you've been invited specifically, I'm here to collect my mother-in-law." Audrey interrupted, her eyes finding me at the table's head. "There appears to be some confusion. Nettie sometimes gets disoriented and—" "Audrey," Michael finally found his voice, standing abruptly. "Stop. Now." "But she doesn't belong here," Audrey insisted, still not comprehending the situation. "She should be at home preparing—" "Mrs. Wright Harrington," Bill interrupted firmly. "You're addressing the majority shareholder of Horizon Tech. I suggest you reconsider your approach." Audrey's expression shifted from confidence to confusion. "What?" I stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "Audrey, as Bill mentioned, I own 51% of Horizon Tech. I have since Harold passed away 5 years ago. The Leech Maid, as you called me last night, controls the company where your husband works." The color drained from her face as understanding dawned. Her perfectly manicured hand gripped the doorframe for support. "That's not possible," she whispered. "You're a retired teacher. You depend on us." "No, Audrey. I let you believe that because Harold and I valued humility and authenticity. We wanted Michael to succeed on his merits, not our money." Michael approached his wife, speaking quietly but intensely. "We need to leave. Now." Audrey seemed unable to move, still processing the revelation. "But the house, the cleaning—" "You let me treat you like—" "Yes," I interrupted. "I did. Perhaps that reveals more about your character than mine." Bill smoothly redirected attention. "Let's take 15 minutes, everyone. When we return, Mrs. Harrington will present her proposal for the Harold Harrington Foundation." As the room cleared, Michael approached me, his expression a complex mixture of shock, embarrassment, and confusion. "Mom, I don't understand. All this time—" "We can discuss this later, Michael," I said quietly. "This isn't the place." "But why didn't you tell me? Do you know what this would have meant for my career, for our lives?" The question revealed so much about how far he'd strayed from Harold's values. "That's exactly why we didn't tell you," I replied. "Money changes people, Michael. It reveals who they truly are." Looking pointedly at Audrey, who stood shell-shocked near the door, I added, "Sometimes that revelation isn't pleasant. Please join us for lunch after the meeting." I continued, my voice softening slightly. Everyone except Audrey. I think she might need time to adjust to our new reality. As I returned to my seat at the head of the table, I felt Harold's presence more strongly than I had in years. This wasn't the path either of us had envisioned, but sometimes respect must be claimed rather than requested. The board members filtered back in, many offering quiet congratulations or expressing appreciation for Harold's legacy. When Bill called the meeting back to order, I presented the Harold Harrington Foundation proposal, a significant commitment to education, environmental sustainability, and community development using 5% of annual profits. The vote to approve was unanimous. Michael, still visibly processing everything, abstained with a dazed expression. As the meeting concluded, Bill invited the board and senior executives to join us for lunch at the Harbor Club on the building's top floor. A celebration of new beginnings, he called it. I noticed Michael hesitating by the elevator, torn between following the executives and returning to Audrey, who had retreated to his office. "She'll survive without you for one lunch," I told him quietly. "This is your career, Michael. These are relationships you need to nurture." He nodded slowly, still looking shell-shocked, and joined us in the elevator to the top floor. The lunch became an impromptu celebration. Executives who had never spoken to me before sought me out to share stories about Harold, their visions for the company, and their appreciation for my foundation proposal. Michael sat quietly at first, but gradually began engaging with colleagues who treated him no differently than before. By dessert, he almost seemed himself again, though his eyes frequently found mine across the table filled with unasked questions. As coffee was served, Patricia raised her glass in a toast. "To Nettie Harrington," she said warmly, "who reminds us that true power doesn't need to announce itself, and true worth isn't measured by how you treat those who can help you, but by how you treat those you think cannot." The sentiment brought unexpected tears to my eyes as glasses raised around the table. In that moment, I felt Harold would have been proud of how Operation Glass Slipper had unfolded. After lunch, I pulled Michael aside. "Come to my new address tonight at 7, I said, handing him a card with my Beacon Hill information. "Just you. We have much to discuss." He nodded, still looking overwhelmed. "Mom, I'm sorry about tonight," I interrupted gently. "Some conversations deserve privacy and time." As Samuel drove me back to my apartment, I watched the city scroll past the window. For 3 years I had been invisible in my own life. Today I had reclaimed not just my identity and power, but something more precious, my dignity. 6 months after what Michael now calls the revelation, my life had transformed completely. My Beacon Hill apartment became home decorated with the photographs and mementos Audrey had banished to the garage. I attended weekly board meetings at Horizon, where my perspective was not only welcomed, but sought after. The Harold Harrington Foundation launched with tremendous success, funding educational initiatives for underprivileged students and environmental restoration projects across New England. Seeing Harold's name associated with positive change in the community brought me profound satisfaction. Michael and Audrey's marriage did not survive the shock of discovering his mother's true financial status. The facade crumbled quickly once Audrey realized there would be no shortcuts to wealth through Michael's inheritance. When she suggested I make things right by transferring some assets to them as compensation for housing me, Michael finally saw her true character. Their divorce proceedings began within weeks of the board meeting. Michael moved into a modest apartment downtown and threw himself into his work at Horizon, where colleagues respected him for handling the situation with dignity. Our relationship required careful rebuilding. The first evening he visited my apartment, the conversation lasted until dawn. "I still can't believe you lived like that when you could have had all this," he said, gesturing around my elegant living room. "Material comfort isn't worth sacrificing authenticity," I replied. "Your father and I always believed that. But why didn't you ever stand up for yourself? Why let Audrey treat you that way?" I considered the question carefully. "Partly out of love for you. I saw you were happy and I didn't want to disrupt that. Partly because I made a promise to your father about keeping our financial situation private. And partly because I needed to see who you would become without the influence of money." His face fell. "And I failed that test spectacularly." "You lost your way," I corrected gently. "But you're finding it again. That's what matters." Over the following months, Michael attended therapy to understand how he had allowed Audrey to influence him so completely. He reconnected with friends he'd neglected during his marriage and rediscovered interests Audrey had dismissed as wasteful. We established new traditions: Sunday brunches, weekly walks along the harbor, occasional weekend trips to the New Hampshire cabin Harold had loved. Slowly, I saw glimpses of the son I'd raised, the man Harold had believed he could become. The most unexpected encounter came 3 months after the revelation, when I found myself face-to-face with Audrey at a charity gala. She approached with the practiced smile I recognized from countless social interactions. "Nettie," she greeted me as if we were old friends. "You look wonderful." "Thank you, Audrey." "I've been hoping to speak with you," she continued, lowering her voice. "I think there were misunderstandings between us. Perhaps we could start fresh." I regarded her calmly, recognizing the calculation behind her friendly overture. "What exactly did you misunderstand, Audrey? That I had value beyond my usefulness as your housekeeper, that treating people with dignity is a choice we make regardless of their perceived status." Her smile faltered slightly. "That's not fair. I was under a lot of pressure trying to help Michael's career." "By humiliating his mother, an interesting strategy." "Look," she said, dropping the pretense, "we both know how the world works. People respect money and power. I treated you based on what I knew." "And that's precisely the problem," I replied. "You treated me according to what you thought I could give you. That reveals character, Audrey. Yours, not mine. So there's no possibility of reconciliation." "For Michael's sake." "Michael has made his choice, and it was the right one. I wish you well, but our paths will not cross again by my choice." As she walked away, I felt no anger or resentment, only sadness for a woman who measured human worth in dollar signs. That evening, reflecting on the encounter, I wrote in my journal about lessons learned through this unexpected journey. At 68, I had discovered new strengths within myself and reconnected with values Harold and I had always shared: authenticity, dignity, and the courage to stand firm in your truth. The wealth Harold left me provided comfort and opportunity, but the true inheritance was his wisdom about how to carry it. Money, I'd learned, was neither good nor evil. It was simply a magnifier of what already existed in a person's character. Audrey's cruelty wasn't created by my perceived poverty. It was revealed by it. Michael's temporary weakness wasn't caused by Audrey's influence. It was exposed through his silence. My own strength wasn't built by reclaiming my financial power. It was uncovered when I finally honored my own worth. Now, as I balanced Harold's philosophy of quiet wealth with my newfound voice on the board, I found satisfaction in strategic philanthropy and mentoring young female executives. I maintained my modest lifestyle in many ways, driving the same reliable car and avoiding ostentatious displays, but I no longer diminished myself to make others comfortable. As Harold used to say, true elegance never needs to announce itself. The same, I discovered, was true of personal dignity. Have you ever had to stand up for your worth after someone underestimated you? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey from Leech Maid to majority shareholder resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more stories about reclaiming your power and dignity. Don't forget to share with someone who might need encouragement to recognize their own value. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, no one can determine your worth but you.